Welcome to Modern Musings, conversations with the maiden, mother, and crone, where we look at ourselves and the world through the lens of the 21st century. Hi, and welcome back. I am your hostess, Cindy Murray, and I would like to preface this episode by saying normally this would have been Kristen's topic, and I know last week we mentioned that we were doing a topic on our favorite books, but we had something that happened that we felt deserved immediate attention, and we all agreed to kind of supplant that episode and move it later in the season and tackle the topic of the Barbie movie. And let me start out by saying that I just wanted to go see this movie because I played with Barbies, and Barbie is kind of an icon to women. A lot of women played with Barbies, and she means a lot of the doll means a lot of different things to a lot of different women. And I just kind of wanted to go check it out because the previews made it look really cute. I love, love, love Margot Robbie, and she looked like a perfect Barbie to me. And I just went into this with no expectations whatsoever, but we decided to go as a girl group. Kristen, Amber, Raina, my niece Ashley, and I all went to this movie, and I don't know about their expectations, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but what my expectation was, it was just going to be a fun kids movie and, celebrating all things Barbie. And, partway through the movie, I think we all turned to look at each other and kind of went, what? And so the movie quickly became something more than just a fun kids movie. And so we all agreed that it was definitely worth coming back, making notes, and doing this as a podcast right away while striking while the iron's hot. And so that's why we're here. And I'm your hostess today. And I will tell you that we have copious notes, so if you hear lots of rustling of papers, that's why. But without further ado, I want to introduce my co-hosts today, Kristen Hessler and Amber Garvin.
Hello.
Hey.
And
hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie. Yeah.
Hi, Barbie.
And we, like I said, this was not supposed to happen like this, but it just felt like the timing was right. And so I wanted to start off talking about my expectations of the movie. Like I said, I had no expectations of it whatsoever. When I told my husband that I was going to see it, he said that he had heard that it was a movie all about Ken's fragile masculinity. And I was like, okay. It didn't seem like that from the previews, but I'll go, whatever. And we will get to that topic later. But that was really all I knew about the movie. I loved Margot Robbie. Ryan Gosling, has been a favorite in a lot of movies. I love Barbie. I grew up with Barbie. And I explained to my husband that Barbie was a big deal to me as a child growing up because Barbie was all the things that I couldn't be. I could let her be all the things that I wanted to be. She was beautiful. She had a great figure. She had wonderful clothes. She had a dream house, a car, a camper. I played with Barbies. Until I was like 15 or 16 years old. So, that's probably, I don't know how many girls play with them that long, but that was a long time, and I still played with my Barbies. So I wanted to ask you two, before we get into the heavy parts of this topic, what were some of your takeaways from the movie without addressing those heavy topics? Because we will talk about those too. But what made you want to go to the movie, and what got you, what were you thinking?
Well, I thought it was going to be a funny and more like slapstick, silly parody of Barbie. Yeah, more like a parody.
A parody, yeah, I really did too.
Because the commercials made it look like it was hilarious. And it was. And just wanted to point out that there are spoilers in here. So we're going to spoil the movie by talking all about everything that happened in the movie.
Good point.
I like to let people know that, because if you have no intention of watching the movie, you should go ahead and listen, because you might decide that you want to watch the movie.
But if you want to go see the movie...
If you want to go see the movie, press pause, go see the movie, and then come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want to spoil the movie for you. Because that was the exciting part for me, was that I wasn't expecting it to be as deep as it was. There were lots of really funny parts of that movie, and I was laughing the whole time. And I also really liked how they portrayed just the glamour of Barbie too. It was very colorful, very visually appealing. The music was fantastic. I've been enjoying listening to the
soundtrack,
actual soundtrack. Yeah. And I mean, there's just so many talking points. When we went to go see it the second time, I wrote 7 pages of notes, and in the dark, so they're kind of messy, but I really enjoyed it. I was surprised, though, yes.
Well, when I went into the Barbie movie, I expected it, and I was actually on the phone with my friend and coworker on the way to meet y'all for the movie, and I was telling her, I was like, I bet this is going to be a dystopian movie. Just from the previews, Barbie land, everything, and then she comes to a sudden realization in the previews. I was thinking, well, they're setting that up to a very Giver-esque dystopian movie.
Okay.
And so my expectation, and I was right, it was Barbie land is, I guess, considered a utopia.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, it's a dystopia.
Yes.
Which is how most utopias turn out anyway.
This is true. Did you have any... Kristen was talking about the aesthetics of the movie. Did you have any other things that surprised you in it? I know when we were talking, Kristen...
the movie references, for sure.
Right.
There was a lot of movie references.
Well, definitely the 2001 Space Odyssey at the very beginning.
The opening scene, yes.
And I remember seeing that as a preview for another movie that Jason and I saw over the summer, like The Flash or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's interesting. Okay, that's a funny preview. I didn't expect it to be actually in the movie.
In the movie, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that it was just like a teaser. That it wasn't the first... 2 minutes of the movie or whatever. And I really did enjoy all of the Kubrick references in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, and different things too, like the aesthetic was really cool. I remember reading about how they ran out of pink paint when they were making the movie because there was so much pink in the movie. But of course, that's what you expect from Barbie, is pink. Because I remember having the big pink Barbie Cadillac when I was a kid. So, and then the pink Barbie A-frame dream house when I was a kid. So, of course, you would expect everything to be pink. One thing that I didn't expect was the other characters. I thought it was just going to be all Barbies. But then there were other characters from Barbie Land as well that I did not expect.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know,
but one of them being particularly Midge,
the
pregnant Barbie,
the pregnant Barbie,
which is actually kind of a joke in the movie about Midge was too weird, so she got discontinued.
They said pregnant doll. There's like a narrator in the movie, and she
played by Helen Mirren.
Oh yes, thank you. And she says, a pregnant doll is just too weird. And I was like, seriously, why is that weird? Like,
well, I remember when
our society is weird.
They came out with the pregnant doll, and I thought it was weird, and I was a little kid. So,
well, I'm with Kristen though. I'm like, why is a pregnant doll? Why is pregnancy a weird thing?
That's the only way you exist on this planet is from coming.
Well,
from that.
I think that maybe like parents don't want
their kids
to play with a pregnant doll because the kids emulate like the doll and the idea and the aesthetic. So if you give a kid from a parent perspective, maybe even a teacher's perspective, if you give a kid a pregnant doll, this kid's going to be like, oh, I want to be pregnant.
Right. That, in fact, that was actually, according to Wikipedia, that was the reason it was discontinued, because parents had an outrage about it because they thought that it was promoting teen sexuality, or teen sexuality and teen pregnancy, but actually technically Midge was an older character. She was, and Barbie herself is not a teenager. Barbie is a young adult, and theoretically Midge was married and having babies.
Well, yeah, I know, like they had like the whole wedding Midge and everything that. But I mean, I think that like I guess because primarily, even though Barbie's an adult, it's kids playing with Barbie. I mean, yes, adults play with Barbie too, I'm sure. But maybe even more from like a, hey, let's put it on my shelf perspective, because I know I still probably have my holiday Barbies in their original box, boxed up somewhere in my attic or something like that. So, not that it's on my shelf or anything. I'm just saying, like, adults probably do have Barbies, like from a perspective of displaying them, but like these kids are primarily playing with Barbies. So if it's like a pregnant Barbie that has a baby, because you can push its belly and the baby opens up and there's the baby, right? I can see why parents would be mad.
I think to me, the weirdest thing about the Midge doll was the mechanism by which the baby is born and Midge becomes not pregnant anymore. So it was
very
actually
unrealistic.
And that could be very confusing for children, because actually the pregnancy tummy comes off like a lid and the baby is inside of it, and you pull the baby out, and then
like a Mr. Potato Head.
Yes.
So, Kristen, do you remember those stuffed animals? This is a weird thing, and I don't think they sell them anymore. They were called Puppy Surprise, where it was like you pull out the babies out of the stuffed animal.
Yeah.
That's kind of the same concept now that I'm thinking about it.
And well, that is, it's an interesting point, because there are a lot of toys that over the years that have been designed to emulate childbirth or animal birth or whatever, and in a lot of cultures,
those from the shelves,
right? And a lot of cultures, those things are celebrated. Those things are they are a normal part of life, and so covering up or hiding that fact is we are the only culture where that is such a weird thing, and I don't want to get too deep into
I was about to say, like, we could go on like a completely different tangent.
I was going to say there's so many different things that this movie touched on. Oh my
gosh.
Just briefly enough to make you think, like, that made me think. And then the movie keeps going, and they're going on about something else, and you're just like, oh, wow.
Wait,
I got to come back to that.
I got to come back to that. Yeah, so that's why we had so many notes. And when we came back, I had like 6 pages of notes, and then I downloaded I went to a website that had a list of all the quotable quotes, and it wasn't even all of the quotable quotes, but it was quite a few of them, and I was like furiously highlighting them. And I mean, like right up until right before we started recording today, I was still making notes about the things I want to talk about on this movie. And it may be the case that, like our Eckhart Tolle coverage of A New Earth, we may come back and reference this movie a lot, because I think there's just so much in it that is discussion worthy. Did you have anything? Oh, well, I didn't ask you about how long either of you played with your Barbies. I'm trying to remember when Kristen got rid of her Barbies.
I'm pretty sure I only stopped playing with mine because we moved here to the Metroplex when I was 13 or 12.
13, yeah.
And I didn't have like a person that I already played with them out here. So,
and you didn't play with them by yourself.
And I enjoyed playing them with someone else.
Yeah. And so you were 13, and what about you, Amber?
I was probably that age.
Yeah.
Middle schoolish. 13's what, like 8th grade-ish, something like
About
that.
the same age as the character in the movie.
Yeah. So,
Sasha?
yeah.
Sasha,
middle
yeah, she was
schoolish.
middle school. Yes.
I remember moving to our new house, and in the den, I had set up all my Barbie houses and stuff like that. And then I want to say either I think my 8th grade year, 7th or 8th grade year, I got a computer and a computer desk for Christmas. So the Barbies went up and I got a computer.
Yeah.
I started playing on the computer. The Barbies went in the box and I started playing on the computer.
Well, and I will say, that I, like Kristen, a lot of my Barbie play was with other girls. And that's why at age 15, I was still playing with Barbies. I didn't necessarily play with them, from probably 12 or 13.
I guess I didn't really play. I guess I had them displayed.
Right.
By
Okay.
myself, only child, I didn't play with them, just displayed.
And so I still had mine. And so when girls came over and I had Barbies, so we would play Barbie together at 15. But I didn't really so much play with Barbies. But my sister and I, right up to that point, had built. My dad was teaching us how to build our own Barbie dream house. My dad was a carpenter, and so he was teaching us woodworking skills and things. And she and I built our very own Barbie dream house. It was a 2-story with a roof that lifted off on a hinge and opened up where you could store all the Barbie clothes in the lid, and we were painting the walls and putting wallpaper and carpet samples on the floors, and it was like a dream house, or like a doll house, like you go to Michael's and buy a doll house and buy all the furniture for, but we were building it ourselves from scratch. And so it wasn't as much Barbie play as it was design.
Yeah.
And he was teaching us carpentry schools because we learned how to use a skill saw and a jigsaw and hammers and nails and things like that. And so that was a really good thing, an empowering thing for me at the time too. So that was my Barbie play at that time.
I want to say that, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I really liked actually, not, I'm Barbie, walking around and stuff, but kind of like you said, design. I would turn my whole room into a Barbie neighborhood.
I was about to say the
the
same
bookshelves
thing.
would be like an apartment complex, and there
yeah.
would be each shelf was a different condo for each of my Barbies. And my best friend who lived down the street from me, our favorite thing to do was to sort the clothes. We would spend most of our time sorting out the clothes, and we would mix hers and my things together, but we knew that's mine.
Whose,
and
yeah.
there was that was some really good sharing and trust.
Yes.
Because there was no oh my God, she might steal my dress, or, oh, I forgot my dress. I was really good at maintaining my Barbie inventory, and, we loved to share. I loved her. Barbie fashion was a little bit more current. I had a lot of hand-me-down Barbies. We would go to the flea market and get Barbie clothes. So I had some really old stuff, and then she had a lot of the new 90s stuff. So it was really fun to swap because she liked my old Barbie clothes and I liked her new stuff, and that was really fun. We would just take the clothes and just, okay, you get a dress, you get a dress, you get a dress, and I felt like that really instilled a lot of sharing and playing well with others for me.
And I think a lot of girls play that way too. Amber was saying that too. My sister and I have an aunt that's 20 months older than me, so we're all very close in age, and we played that way too. We spent more time splitting out the clothes, accessorizing, and
yeah, that's what I mainly did.
We would take turns. I picked this dress. You pick that dress. I picked this dress. You pick that dress. And then we'd get everything separated out, and then we'd pick different areas of the living room or the bedroom or whatever. And that was going to be my apartment, and there's your dream house. And, whatever furniture we had, we'd set it up. And by the time we got all done with that, it was time to eat. And we never did really do much play.
Yeah.
I did some little play with my sister, mostly with G.I. Joes and Barbie. And that's a whole nother topic there. But yeah, I think a lot of girls played that way too. And you're right. It is a really good metaphor for sharing, or I guess not a metaphor, but a mechanism for sharing and learning some of those skills as well. Do y'all have anything else to add on those topics or anything before I dive into the really deep stuff?
I don't think so.
Okay. I have a kind of a list of things, and it kind of goes in movie order. But I'm going to start with the beginning of the movie, and it kind of goes with something I was telling my husband before I went to the movie, because when I told him I was going to the movie, there was a part of me that felt like I had to justify why I was going to the Barbie movie, because I am a almost 60-year-old woman. Why am I going to a Barbie movie?
Well, there were people of all ages there, including teenage boys.
Oh yes, this is true. And we'll talk about some of that too. But yeah, I was like, I don't know. It just kind of felt like, why am I going to the Barbie movie? And I felt like I had to justify that. And I explained it, as I grew up with Barbie. Barbie was all the things that I wanted to be. She was beautiful. She was 5'9". She has I think they said a 36, 16, 34 build, so she's very curvy. She has beautiful clothes. She has her own dream house. She has her own car. She has all these things. Her life is perfect, whatever. But Barbie also represented something that didn't exist for me as a child. And that was the opportunity to be things like a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. Because when I was a child, there just weren't a lot of those things. So the movie, as we said, here's the spoilers. Tune out. Go watch the movie if you don't want to hear them. It starts out with this very Stanley Kubrick-esque version, or a Barbie-esque version of Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. The opening scene where the apes are kind of sitting around, and the monolith appears in the morning when they wake up. And so the dialogue goes like this. Since the beginning of time, since the first little girl ever existed, there have been dolls. But the dolls were always and forever baby dolls. Until, and then here's the monolith, and it's a Barbie.
A giant Barbie.
A giant Barbie, yes. And so then the little girls start playing with the Barbie, and they talking about it, how the dolls that we played with, and I was 5. Barbie was only 5 years old when I was born, so Barbie was still pretty new, and there really weren't any other dolls except for baby dolls. And they talk about how the only thing that girls could aspire to be was a mommy. That was the only thing we could play with, unless we played with boys' toys. So the girl toys were dolls, and the dolls were always baby dolls. And it kind of left that it was, in the movie, the Helen Mirren quotes also says, it can be fun for a while, but
ask your mother.
Yeah. Ask your mother. There's some fun things to it, but it gets old. It does. And so, the idea was that Barbie changed everything. And there is actually a quote in the movie that says Barbie changed everything, and then she changed it again. And when she came out in 1959, they had the premise that the story of the movie is that the premise was that they were creating Barbie, and it allowed girls to dream, and to be something more than just, marriage and motherhood and all those things. And in the movie, they felt like they had fixed all of the problems of feminism for girls. And in Barbie Land, everything was perfect. In fact, they start out with a day in the life of Barbie. And she wakes up and her hair is fixed, and she takes a perfect shower, and she has a perfect breakfast, and her clothes pop on her, and she doesn't even have to walk out of the house. She just kind of floats down, and they're all friends. There's no jealousy. The friends are all just friends with each other. Their perfect world is this perfect feminist society where the Barbies have all the jobs, and the Kens are just Kens. It's kind of like the opposite of what the real world is. And, by thinking that they fixed everything, it just swung everything the opposite direction. And in the real world, it's not perfect. It didn't really fix everything, right?
Right.
I mean, I think as women, we all agree to that. But the idea that Barbie was empowering. I think Barbie was empowering. And it did change things, but the movie goes on to some other points that are kind of the dark side that it didn't address, that Barbie didn't fix everything.
I think you can't expect that just because Barbie introduces this independence in women, that Barbie is the only thing that carries it. It just sparks the flame. But there's other tools and people that carry that forward. Just like saying the Model T, we're not still driving around in Model Ts. We have newer cars. We have newer technology.
They're better. They're improved.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We've landed on the moon now. We're going to see Mars and other
Right.
stuff. So just to say that, like, Barbie, just because Barbie started that or was a crucial piece of that, and to expect Barbie to be the end all be all of that and to hold the answer for women's liberation is absurd.
Right. No, I agree. There is no end all, be all, fix all. And we'll talk about that some too. I've got some thoughts that wrap up the movie that go along with those ideas. I was interested in how Barbie has a crisis, and she has to go to the real world. And once they get to the real world, Ken sees that everything is the opposite. The real world is the opposite of this utopia Barbie land, right?
Yeah, well, like in the Barbie movie, Ken is just Barbie's accessory in Barbie land.
You know
like
what?
He exists only. And it even comments in the movie that Ken's day is not happy unless Barbie acknowledges him.
Right. And the thing that I thought of when I saw that isn't that a mirror, a
Women
reverse?
in the 40s.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the
women in
women's
general.
It's
Right.
the women's world. That was us. A woman is nothing. I know a lot of women who think they aren't anything unless they're in a relationship with a man, and
they're not happy unless a man is talking to them or whatever.
Yes, and there's a lot of women out there that still feel that. So I think this movie kind of addresses that issue as well. But yeah, Ken actually comes out into the real world, and he sees that the patriarchy exists and that he is admired. And,
Yes, when they're on Venice Beach, they come in skating in their, like, absurd 90s skating outfit, like...
Yeah.
I know, Barbie's
Because there
wearing
was
like a thong.
there was inline skate
Yeah.
Barbie
Like
or whatever.
inline
Yeah.
skate,
Yeah, I
wearing
had
a
that one.
thong.
Yeah.
And like,
So...
you know what? I think I did too.
Yeah, they came roller skating in the beach, and everyone is gawking at them. And the funny thing is, they're catcalling both of them and laughing at both of them
Yeah.
and admiring both of them because everybody has their own opinions. but both of them feel completely different. Barbie feels really insecure, and now she doesn't understand why everyone's looking at her,
And she feels
objectified.
She's objectified. She feels an undertone of violence. Ken even says, "I don't feel an undertone of violence."
Yeah, he actually
really enjoys
feels uplifted by it. He's like, people admire me.
People are paying attention to me. Barbie never pays attention to me.
I wrote a note there that men get natural respect just for being a man.
Yeah, they do. But that doesn't happen with women. But it does in Barbie Land.
Right.
And it's weird because men get natural respect from men and women just for being a man. And I've noticed that like in a lot of people, like in dealing with people where I give advice and a man gives advice as well, and it's not listened to until the man gives the advice.
Yes.
There's a scene where they go, "Let me show you," where all the Kens are saying like that they're gonna show Barbie how to do something she doesn't know how to do, and all the Kens are like, "Let me show you," and they're talking about how they like what do you call that, mansplain things.
Yeah. There's a lot of correlations in Barbie Land that are exactly the opposite of what things really are. And I think what you're talking about is later on when it becomes Kenland. They were talking about in the movie, Barbie winds up at Mattel and finds that Mattel is run by men still. And there's a whole lot of unpackaging to go there.
Yeah, she was very shocked when she found out that Mattel was run by a man, Will Ferrell, played by Will Ferrell.
Right. And that whole thing goes a lot into like the Barbie's physical shape and stuff. The fact that men are the ones who design what Barbie looks like, what the ideal Barbie doll should be looking like. It's not women who are designing that. It was men. And
he even calls her a Jezebel.
Yes, he does.
Everyone is like,
and everybody's like, "Oh gosh, like you can't say that."
And he's like, "Oh, you can't say that now?" Like,
right. But meanwhile, Ken is out there in the real world, and he's like seeing guys work out and high-fiving each other and all this stuff.
Corporate talk.
Yes, and dismissive of their secretaries or whatever. And she's very submissive, and she moves off to the side and just sits there weak and dumb. But he somehow, I can't remember how he gets into this conversation, but he approaches a businessman. I think he's trying to get a job. And he tells the guy, well, give me a job because I want a job. I'm a man. And the guy said, well, I can't just give you a job because you're a man.
Yeah, he said you have to have a degree.
You have to have a degree or something like that. And Ken said, well, you're not doing patriarchy very well. And the answer from that character was, we do. We just hide it better.
Well, yeah, it's nowadays, of course, they hide it better, but it's still very much a patriarchy.
Right. And so the point is that there were some women in Mattel. Barbie actually was brought to Mattel by a woman, Ruth Handler. Her husband was one of the co-founders of Mattel. She saw the Barbie, a doll similar to Barbie, in Germany while they were on a trip to Europe. And she basically bought some of the dolls, came back, and presented the dolls to Mattel. So she really didn't design. People think she designed the doll. She did not design the doll. She actually copied another doll, and Mattel was actually under lawsuit from the German company that created the doll for copyright infringement or whatever the case was. So even though the Barbie was started by a woman, she did not invent the doll. And the character,
I know she didn't invent it, but she was credited for designing Barbie.
But she did not design Barbie at all. She did not do anything towards the design. She just brought the idea to Mattel. And she had actually brought the idea to Mattel before they came up with this doll, because she saw that her daughter, Barbara, was playing with paper dolls, and that she was using the paper dolls in adult ways. So instead of playing babies with paper dolls, she was cutting out paper dolls and making them grown women and doing things with them. And so she actually presented Mattel, which was populated by men, with this idea, and they shut her down. And it wasn't until they saw the popularity of the dolls that she brought from Germany that they accepted the idea. And like I say, they basically stole the idea from the German company. And if you look at the pictures of the doll, they are strikingly similar. There is no way that she had any design input in that at all. The dolls are almost identical. And it's kind of sad. She actually was later removed from Mattel over some things. In the movie, they say it was because of the IRS. It wasn't the IRS. She and her husband were creating fraudulent bookkeeping records, so they were probably embezzling. I don't know the details of that, but that's kind of what it sounds like. So, but yeah, the design of the dolls was after a kind of floozy girl character in a comic strip in Germany, and she was she never really got updated, other than some technology that helped change the shape of her arms, bendable legs, some things like that. Her proportions never changed or anything like that until much, much, much later. And that it's kind of a reflection of what the men at Mattel or whatever wanted to see in the perfect woman, and really not representative at all of what an actual woman looks like.
I think you also have to take into consideration what people will buy.
Well, that is true. Yeah. But do you think if they had a more realistic looking doll, still glamorous, but more realistic, do you think that they would still have bought it?
I don't know. Maybe, possibly, probably. I think that...
I don't think so.
I think people are more willing to buy something that's more idealistic than what's more realistic, because that's why they purchase it. Because the whole purchasing power is that you are gaining something that you don't have.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's why you're buying it in the first place.
The ideal woman was very much that.
That's
way
what it was
back in the 40s. That was
40s and 50s. That was the ideal
magazine
woman.
Right.
That's
how
why
she
I'm
looked.
But if you look later in the 70s or whatever, when you have models like Twiggy who was very flat,
that's why they came out with Skipper.
Yeah, maybe so. But Skipper wasn't tall either. But yeah, there's. Mattel did later come out with different races of Barbie, different skin tones, different things like that. And the idea was because people wanted dolls that they could relate to.
Right.
And they couldn't relate to this blonde.
Right. But they had to target the audience that had the most money at the time.
Well, that's true. That is true also. So, anyway, as I go on, we've talked about so in fact, this kind of leads right into that, because the doll in the cartoon strip was a bimbo. And I think at some point in the movie, Barbie gets called a bimbo.
Oh, I love that quote. I tried to write it.
I couldn't write it all down either. But
so fast. They talk so fast. Every time they said something that was just like genius, I was like, "Oh, you're talking too fast."
Yes, and it was something along the lines of, Barbie's not a bimbo. She's a doctor and a lawyer and she says all these things because I think a lot of people perceive the doll as being a bimbo in some ways.
Well, that's another pop culture thing. Like the blonde person in the movies with the big boobs is always the bimbo.
Portrayed as the bimbo.
Especially like in a horror movie, the blonde girl, always a bimbo.
Right. And Margot Robbie's Barbie character, goes on to say Barbie is not a bimbo. She was supposed to be all these things, but there's that song, Barbie girl, I'm a Barbie girl and a Barbie. It's a whole spoof of Barbie, making fun of how shallow an idea Barbie is, because some people perceive Barbie as just being this shallow character that's only interested in fashion.
Clothes, yeah.
Clothes, fashion. Like the song Life is Plastic. It's fantastic because, fake boobs, fake hair, Barbie girl.
Yeah, that's it. And a lot of people, that is their perception of what Barbie is. And her argument was that Barbie was actually more than that. But at the same time, the Sasha character, who is the young teen, she says to Barbie, "You've been making women feel bad about themselves since you were invented."
And that's kind of true, too, because, like, young girls look at Barbie, and when they grow up,
their life is not like Barbie.
Their life is not like Barbie. They don't have everything. They don't have the boobs. They don't have the perfect butt. They don't have the hourglass figure, the hips, the blonde hair,
the car, and all
the
car,
and that
the
goes
kin,
back to
whatever. Like it does, Barbie does, in a sense, when girls grow up, make
have
them
everything.
disappointed about themselves. Barbie has everything. Little girls don't. The grown-up girls don't. There's never going to be. I mean, I'm not going to say never going to be a kin, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Barbie doesn't explain you have to work for all of those things.
Yeah,
right. But the
never.
idea was, according to the movie, the idea was that by creating Barbie and allowing girls to dream that they could be those things, that they would dream about being those things, and then they would move on into becoming those things. And in some ways, that is
a
true.
Shortcut. Like, people don't want to try to become. They just want to be like Ken. Just wanted to be a doctor,
right?
Like,
But in a lot of ways, it is true that Barbie did provide those things, because women at that time that Barbie came out, women were not doctors. They were not Supreme Court justices. They were not on the cabinet of our government. They didn't do all of those things, and allowing Barbie, Barbie allowed them to dream about becoming an astronaut. And if you can dream it, you can be it. Right? So if you can't even dream it, you're never going to be it. And that was the point of that, I think. And, but you're right. It doesn't take it far enough. It doesn't, show that you have to go to school and you have to get good grades and you have to do all these things.
And I think that was I think that's the disappointing aspect that she was talking about. Like, I'm going to grow up and be just like Barbie and be a doctor. Well, you're 18, you're grown up, but now you have to spend like 20 more years in school to be a doctor.
Well, and women look at Barbie's figure and they lament that they feel bad about themselves because they don't look as pretty as Barbie.
Right, and that's not Barbie's fault.
That's not Barbie's fault. That is our society.
Blame Barbie.
But they blame Barbie. Some people blame Barbie for that. And again, I go back to the thing. Barbie wasn't designed by women. Barbie was designed by men. Men chose that ideal figure.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people that spend millions of dollars to try to
make
look
themselves
like
look
Barbie.
that way. Yes, they
or
do.
Ken.
So Margot Robbie talks about how men, in the real world, men look at her like she's an object and girls hate her. And then that is followed by Sasha, the young girl character, saying, "Women hate women and men hate women. It's the one thing we can agree on."
Oh, that really got me in the movie, because I say that all the time. Women hate women. Honestly, who talks more crap
About women?
about women
Than
women.
Now, men do not do that to themselves, to each other. Men are jealous of each other sometimes.
Yeah,
But-
they do have their methods of bullying.
Right.
Yeah,
but,
men are kind of gossipy.
but women are terrible. I've worked in office places where there were lots of women, and honestly, one of the main reasons I left the workforce to work at home was because I hated working with other women because they are so catty. They cut each other down in order to build themselves up. And
step on each other
yes.
get to the top, or are in competition with each other to get the male gaze attention.
Yeah.
And, it's the same way with, like, students in a class. Like, the girls, especially if there's a cute boy in the class, will step on each other to get the cute boy's attention.
Yeah. Or to get the job. They will step on their coworkers to get the job.
If you have a corporate world where 90% of the employees are men and there's only 10% are women, those women have to fight over each other to get
that
promotions.
1% job. Right.
Yeah.
Or that 10% job or whatever it is. And it is. And that society, I have a theory about this because in the movie, Ken goes back to Barbie Land and he takes the idea of patriarchy back to Barbie Land. And so he turns Barbie Land upside down. And the way that the Barbies get their power back is by turning the Kens on each other. Now, how do they turn the Kens on each other? By making them jealous and making them want to fight. And I'm thinking, as I'm watching this, I'm thinking that's exactly what happens in the real world. Men turn women against each other. Men make women jealous of each other. Men set up this system where we have to fight and claw at each other. Men love a cat fight. Men love a cat fight.
And
So
they
do
allow
women.
it to happen.
They
Whether
don't just
they-
allow it to happen. They create the environment which promotes it to happen. And I think that is one of the ways that we are kept down. That, that in the real world, men keep women in this thing where there's always friction between other
the
women.
box.
Huh?
They keep them in the box.
In the box, like the Barbie.
They wanted to put her in the box to control her. That's
control
exactly
her.
what it is.
Yeah.
They have to put us in some type of box to control us because they are afraid that we will
Strip them of their power.
strip them of their power. Exactly.
And by keeping us fighting with each other, we are weakened and therefore cannot fight against their patriarchy. And I'm not saying all men are this. That is not what the Barbie movie is saying either. The Barbie movie is just saying that you cannot go on and pretend that this stuff doesn't exist. It's still there. It has not been fixed. We have not fixed this problem. Just like racism is
And
still here.
inequality, yeah.
All inequalities, they're all still there. And all of these little things that keep a different group oppressed, keep the group that's in power. And they are never going to want to fix it unless we can make it so that they can still have their own power. That you have to convince people that by giving me power, I'm not taking away from your power. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Gloria has a monologue, and this is the big thing of the movie, I think. It's the thing I read about the most when I started researching what I wanted to talk about and how I wanted to address this. Should we read it? Do you want to read it?
Yeah, read it because
Okay.
it's nothing that's new under the sun.
It's not.
Everything she says was 100% true. It's something I've felt. It's something I've heard or seen online before.
Right.
Yeah.
You felt it. Okay. Well, and I will add to this that I read part of an article from America Ferrera, who plays the character Gloria, who does this monologue in the movie. And you may remember her as Ugly Betty. She is a phenomenal actress, beautiful person.
Which, let's not even start on the name of that show.
Right. I know. I have a whole nother thing about that too. But she was giving an article or giving an interview in Time Magazine, and she said, there is no woman in my life who those words aren't true for. Not a single one. And when we hear the truth, it hits a certain way, and you can't unhear it. And so here is her monologue. It starts out because Barbie says, I'm not good enough for anything. Because the Barbie, what was she? The stereotypical Barbie is Margot Robbie. She's just a blonde Barbie. She doesn't really have a job. She's just Barbie. She's just the plain blonde Barbie.
She says, like, when you think of Barbie, people think of me. Just
right.
Barbie.
She is the one you think of. But she doesn't really have a job. And she talks about that. I'm not good enough for this. I can't be a...
She said, I haven't been to the moon. I can't be a doctor. And she listed off all of these things that none of us have ever done.
None of us have ever done.
One tiny percentage of human
and
womankind.
she is this is where she's beating herself up for not being all those things when all the other Barbies are. And she says, I'm not good enough for anything. And I know we've all felt that before. And so Gloria's answer to this is, it's literally impossible to be a woman. You're so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like, we always have to be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but you also have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that would be crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women, because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful. But never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. And I apologize. I know I did not read that as well as she read that in the movie. It brought me to tears.
It was a really good monologue, yes.
It was a great monologue. She
one of the best movie monologues I've heard lately.
In a while. Yeah, and America Ferrera did say that it took her like 3 days or something like that to
get it right.
To go through. I don't know how many cuts they went through to get it perfect. But it was really perfect. Oh, and she goes on to say, I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll just representing women, then I don't even know. And it is. We are condemning Barbie for being a floozy and a bimbo and not fixing the...
Or having the wrong figure.
Or having the wrong figure or whatever, just the same way we attack real women in the real world. So it just...
Well, I always have said the biggest hater of women is other women.
Oh, absolutely. I think so. And it's really hard. I'm really surprised because I've had so many negative situations with other women being catty, being competitive with each other. Men can compete with each other in a very non-personal way. Men can compete for a job and there's nothing personal. They can still be friends. But if women compete for a job, it's like a personal
attack. Yeah, personal attack.
And if some woman makes an attack like that on you, if woman competes with you for a man, for a job, looks better than you, that is like this unforgivable thing, and you will hate that woman for the rest of your life. That's it's set up to be that way.
It's so true.
It is. It's set up to be that way.
Y'all need some Eckhart Tolle.
So, it is. It's all about ego. Everything always comes back to ego.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's always, even if you say, oh, nothing's about me, it's always about yourself. Like, if somebody gets promoted over you and then you're just like, ugh, I've been here longer, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, well, maybe that person has done a better job than you and you don't realize it.
Right. Have you looked at what things you're doing wrong? But we never look at ourselves and find what we did. Well, I say we never do that. We do. We look at ourselves and criticize ourselves all the time, but are we looking at ourselves honestly, or are we just saying, I can't do anything right, like Barbie did? Mm-hmm. I can't do anything.
Now, I want to say, like, we don't look at ourselves honestly, going back to the Eckhart Tolle thing, and of course, the Barbie movie, like, especially women, we don't look at ourselves honestly, maybe because we've been beaten down or we have an overly inflated ego.
Right.
It's really hard. I mean, men too. It's really hard for people in general to look at themselves honestly, like, hey, this is what I'm doing wrong and this is what I can do to be better.
Right. I think that comes back to shadow work. In a lot of ways. Why am I reacting this way towards this?
Yes, I felt that way in the movie. So when Barbie goes to meet Sasha at school and she's with her friends, and that's where she says, you are sexualized capitalism, unrealistic ideals, innate sense of worth, rampant consumerism. She was talking about
like all
the bad negative things about Barbie. And I thought, at one point in my life, I was negative Barbie. Against Barbie because of something that I saw that I didn't like. And I look back now and I'm like, oh, wow, why didn't I like Barbie? Oh, because of her figure. She was over-sexualized. But was she really? I mean, she wasn't like being a tramp. She was just voluminous body. And in that stage in my life when I didn't like that about Barbie, I also was insecure about my own
physical
figure.
Yeah.
And so my question is, what is it about Barbie that you don't like that she has to offer for society? Ask yourself why you don't like that. What is it about your life that you're missing in that or you have too much of?
Right. I agree. Absolutely. So my question is, if all these things are true, and they are, I mean, honestly, these things are true. All the things you said about Barbie being rampant consumerism and over-sexualized figure and things like that, but also at the same time, things like Gloria's monologue are also true, that we are expected to be sexy. We are expected to be thin, but we can't say we're thin. We can't say that we want to be thin. We have to say, I want to be healthy. But being healthy means you also have to be thin. How do we reconcile these things? Where do we go from here that we make those things not true anymore? How do we go from all these terrible conundrums that we find ourselves in admiring Barbie, what do we do to fix that? Yes.
I know. So there was a part in the movie that it made me cry. Just thinking about it makes me cry. There was an older woman sitting on a bench. Older woman as in like my great-grandmother older. She was sitting on a bench, and Barbie had just come to realize, she had awoken to like the senses of the real world. She could hear the birds, she could hear people laughing, and
she had emotional moments.
She had a new perspective, and she turned and looked at that woman and she said, "You're beautiful."
Yes.
Most people would go, "Ew, old woman," right?
Yeah.
She had swollen ankles. She was wearing
Frumpy
women,
clothes.
frumpy clothes.
We use the word frumpy.
Exactly.
I just did it.
Exactly.
I just did that to her.
And I'm like, oh, she was old, you know?
She's old.
And she turned to her, the older woman, and she said, "I know it."
Yes. Very confidently, I know it.
Yeah.
I know.
And that's the start right there.
That's the key, yourself, yeah.
Not judging.
Right.
Giving people positive affirmations.
Seeing the beauty in other people.
Yes.
Recognizing.
And not pointing out the things that you don't think are beautiful about them, because that's not your prerogative to tell other people that they're unattractive or that they're not smart or, oh, you're short. Like, why? They know how tall they are. They don't need to be told that they're short.
Right.
Because those things make us have those emotional feelings of insecurity.
Right. Well, and do you think that we're going back to Tolle here? Everything goes back to Eckhart Tolle. Those things, like I was talking about, shadow work, mirroring those things that you hated in Barbie. And I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. I can't remember which one it was, but how if you see something you don't like, there's usually a reason for that, and it's because it's bouncing on something in you, like reflecting, like a mirror, and it's illuminating a part of yourself that you don't like. So either you don't like that sexy, beautiful Barbie because you feel insecure about yourself, and so what you reflect back to the world is that nobody should be beautiful because I can't be beautiful, or everybody should look like me, or why can't there be a Barbie that looks like me?
And sometimes it's just something that you're raised, like having a parent that
Right.
tells you that,
Right.
oh, don't wear that dress, you look like a hussy.
Yes.
I was going to say that generational trauma right there.
Right.
Like,
yeah. And there's all
Exactly.
these
Exactly that.
things
That's the first place right there.
Yeah.
Mothers raising their daughters,
Right.
and their sons,
but
fathers.
those are all things that Tolle talks about too, about they're all ego driven. They're all ego driven. And once we get out of that ego of I'm better than you, I have to make myself better than you by hating you, by cutting you down, that brings me up. Things like those are all ego driven activities. And once we become aware of those and stop acting out of ego, then, and like I said, I just called that woman's clothes frumpy. I don't even remember what she was wearing, but that was the
she was
perception.
wearing clothes of her generation.
Yeah. And that was the perception. But we call that frumpy because she wasn't dressed up and sexy and beautiful.
But if she was dressed up sexy, you would have been like, look at that granny. Why is she dressed up sexy?
Dressed up like that?
Because Dolly Parton gets some of that flack from people too.
Right.
Well,
Of
people
She gets flack
like
because she has breasts. I mean,
people just have expectations about how somebody should look at a certain age. You know, like here I am about to turn 40 and I have blue hair.
Yeah.
And now like maybe blue-haired old lady. No, not really. But, you know, like...
You're not the crone.
I know, right? Like, people don't expect me to have colorful hair at 40.
Right. But I think that is changing. I do think that is changing because I've mentioned this before.
Mine and Kristen's generation... when
Embrace
we get
that.
old, we're all going to have like sagging tattoos and everything like that.
But there are women who are my generation who are now coloring their hair. And I have a great deal of friends who have pink, purple, blue, green hair. I've dyed mine too.
A societal norm right now.
It is becoming, but But, 10 years ago, they would have looked at us like, what is wrong with you? But
Grow up.
Grow up.
Yeah.
Grow up. Yeah, you shouldn't be doing that anymore. You're too old for that. If you've got there's a great commercial. I'm trying to remember what, it's an eHarmony commercial. And it's two girls sitting on the beach, and they're really cute, and they're talking about how they shouldn't have to compromise or whatever. And then they notice this older woman on the beach. I don't know if y'all have seen this one or not. She's probably in her late 60s, early 70s maybe, and she's in a bathing suit. She's got a pretty voluptuous figure. She's bleached blonde, tan, little wrinkled, she's of that age. Her skin shows her age. And she sits down in her chair and pulls the straps off of her swimsuit down and puts her suntan lotion on and lays back her chair. And the girls are looking at her going, that's the ideal. That is the role model, or what. I can't remember what their exact words are. She was totally a different ideal than most women would say is, because she was, scantily dressed on. I can't see my mother wearing something like that or looking like that on the beach. I'll just say it. She would never do that. It would be like the lady sitting on the park bench if she had been wearing that. Right. And so it's like, but they're idolizing it. She's the role model. She is the one. And then next to her is this little old man, and he's putting lotion on his hairy chest, and and it's like, be who you are. Be who you are. Find the person that gets you. And I liked that because she was different. She was a different standard. And why is there a standard of what a woman should look like at that age or whatever? And why is it not just as beautiful for this woman to be wrinkly and in outdated clothing sitting on a park bench?
Well, that's a woman's fear, especially Hollywood getting wrinkles.
Gosh, yeah.
Women spend millions of dollars in plastic surgery, billions of dollars in plastic surgery not to be wrinkled.
Right.
And one of my mom's fears was gray hair. My mom every month spent hundreds of dollars on her hair, and my grandma was the same way. Hundreds of dollars every month. My grandmother went weekly to get her hair done so that she would not have gray hair. Exactly.
But those standards, I think those standards need to be done away with. I think it should be whatever,
embrace the gray, like Jamie Lee Curtis.
I have my gray. I do not color my gray. Now I have colored my hair green, but it wasn't to color the gray. It was just to be green. But I don't color my gray at all. I earned every gray hair I have.
Amen.
See, I only have gray around my temples, but it refuses to be covered even if I tried.
I don't try to eliminate my wrinkles. I earned those as well. I do try to lose weight, and this goes back to that be thin, be healthy monologue. But I like I say, I think the only way to heal this world and make us come to this place where we fix those problems is to first be happy with ourselves. And then also to show other people, the men, that by giving us power, we are not taking away power from them. We are adding to the power.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
They're afraid.
Well, and that's another
story
topic.
for another
that's
time.
Another topic. Hi guys, we are going to pause this episode right now and come back with another part of it later. We've already gotten into a lengthy bit of discussion here, and we haven't even touched barely.
No, we haven't.
Yeah, there's a lot more that we want to talk about. So we're going to pick this back up with a addition to this episode. So this is a great stopping point, and join us back for the second half of our discussion about Barbie, and we'll resume the conversation then.